So welcome everyone. As you know, I'm Kelley Keehn. I'm your host for this first ever roundtable on fraud prevention. I'm so very thankful for all of you to be here today. And I'm really thankful to our sponsor, ETF Capital Management, and the founders, Larry Berman and Jared Rabinowitz, who really made this possible. So that's great. And to all of you, because every single day you are working so hard to protect Canadians, empower Canadians, and educate them, surrounding issues of identity theft, fraud, and investment scams. So it's just such a thrill to have you here. We have Daniel Williams from the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. You're a senior fraud specialist. Cairine Wilson, Vice President, Corporate Citizenship with the Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada. Jennifer Fiddian-Green, Forensic Partner with Grant Thornton. Commissioner Lucie Tedesco with the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. And John Russo, Vice President, Legal Counsel, Corporate Secretary, and Chief Privacy Officer. Welcome, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Pleased to be here. So let's start off with our first issue now. What trends are we seeing in fraud and in cybercrime? Maybe Daniel, you could start us off with that, please.
Well, the losses reported by Canadians to cybercrimes are just off the charts. The internet, it seems, was invented for the sole purpose of fraudsters doing their job. The use of the technology by the bad guys makes it just so easy for them to reach everybody.
Yeah. Anyone else see any trends moving forward?
We see a lot of the callers to our call centers are victims of hacktivism. We've seen a significant increase in those calls, and the poor Canadians who are victimized are really hurt badly.
So hacktivism, we have a whole new neologism for what's happening because of the internet, right? So this is just people being hacked and actually criminals going after individuals as a career. Cairine, I know that CPA Canada does a fraud survey almost every year for the last several years. Can you tell us about some of those findings?
Mm-hmm. Happy to. Yes, we have been doing a survey every year for the past 3 years, basically to find out Canadians' attitudes toward fraud and also the incidence of fraud. So our most recent survey last year, we found that 1/3 of all respondents have been victims of fraud. And that number has remained relatively flat over the 3 years that we've been doing this survey. And certainly we have found that the most prevalent types of fraud are credit card fraud at 67%,
Wow.
followed by debit card fraud at 29%. And interestingly, this year, we saw quite an increase in online fraud, which was up to 16% versus 6% in 2014.
There's just so much shame and embarrassment oftentimes when it comes to talking about something as diverse as what we're talking about. Maybe identity theft, we're okay talking about that, but when we're a victim of fraud, when we're a victim of a romance scam, of clicking on that phishing email, of being a victim of Earl Jones or Bernie Madoff, we don't have those numbers. It's so incredibly small. So maybe Jennifer, you can lead us and talk about how do we protect ourselves as Canadians and also, get those reporting numbers up.
So it's really important, I think, as in our conversation today, as we talk about this, that the people who are victims, whether it's the identity theft or the different types of frauds, that we give those people some confidence so that they can be confident victims, because a lot of this is happening, it's completely out of their control. Yes, there's some times that we, and we feel guilty, we shouldn't have clicked here, we shouldn't have answered, we shouldn't have, we should not have we should have hung up the phone, we should have deleted the email, but we are being targeted. We are being targeted. And if we go back to the hacks and the cybercrime and groups that we don't even know about in parts of the world that we are not even thinking about are going after our data, that's out of our control. Right?
I really think it's largely a question of mindset. Say your house is broken into or your car is vandalized, you don't hesitate to call the authorities. But for some reason, that's not that doesn't ring true for fraud and identity theft. Take the same approach we do with other types of crimes.
Consumers need to know that their efforts matter. That
that's right.
the energy that they put into reporting, whether to an authority like the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, their local police, even their neighbours, the local media, any of the energy that they put into that is going to absolutely diminish the power of the bad guys, phenomenally.
So if you've already been scammed, at least report it so we can help other Canadians as well. John, would you like to
But
contribute?
proactively, there's proactive measures that consumers can take as well. Simple tip as checking your credit file at least once a year, right? At least do it
And they
once
can
a
do
year.
that for free, right, John?
They can do it for free.
Thank you.
There's a myth in Canada that people
Yeah.
think they could only get their credit report once a year for free.
And it doesn't hurt your score either to check it.
Doesn't impact
That's
your
right.
score whatsoever when you check your file. You're not looking for credit, you're just looking at your file. So at least once a quarter, we say to consumers, go out, check what's on your file, make sure everything's there is fair and accurately represented, because you don't want to wait till you go to apply for a mortgage, then it's too late.
Yes.
And you want to look for fraud. You want to look for any credit lines that have been opened, any attempts to change your address, to send your mail somewhere else. Those will all be relevant indicators on your file. So that's a simple tip and a free tip.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of people are very familiar with credit card theft, with maybe some of the smaller ones. What rights do we have as consumers regarding this area?
Well, credit card and debit card issuers do afford consumers protection for any unauthorized transactions on lost or stolen credit cards or debit cards. That's a right consumers have. But consumers in turn also have a responsibility to take an active role in their own protection. As I was handing over my son his first debit card, I told him 3 things. I said, don't share your PIN number with anyone, family, friends, don't do it. Change your PIN regularly to ensure that you're try to be one step ahead of the hackers. And the next thing is, make your PIN easy to remember but difficult to guess.
Right. How about when we've done everything possible? We've shredded, we've protected our PINs, we've checked our credit, we're doing that, but we have these breaches. We have companies, sometimes even governments, sometimes big institutions in the U.S. that we think we're protected. What do we do as consumers when that happens?
Well, now it's the law. I mean, the law is breach notifications coming shortly here in Canada. So companies are obligated now to advise consumers when they've lost your information. So that's the law. What you can do is hold them accountable. Most companies that want to maintain that customer goodwill, because not only their customers are looking at them, but future customers are looking at their what they're doing. They offer them such things as credit monitoring or protection, ID theft monitoring. So that at least gives the consumer some comfort.
Credit card protection is phenomenal in Canada. You go on a site, the site looks real. You place what you think is a legitimate order, for, by the way, ridiculously low prices. And, you find out from the first email that, it seems to be coming from China, or 2 weeks later when you actually get the product and it's coming from, a very low-grade illegal factory in China. You realize that you've been had. You've got 500 days to get your money back. If consumers were all aware of that, I don't see what the profit margin for the bad guys would be.
Now, Jennifer, when I interviewed you just about 2 years ago, and you were also the technical editor on the book, you were pretty passionate about what you thought about our, how we should approach internet banking, that we should maybe even have a separate computer, let's say at home, if your kids are going online. Where are you now? Where are you now, and what you recommend in your comfort level with internet banking, mobile technology, all of that?
We used to just have one computer in the household that was hooked up to the internet, to the system, and now we have so many different devices. So if we're using every device to access that, those accounts of ours, our financial accounts, our investment accounts, our bank accounts, just step back for a moment and understand and I'm not an IT person, but the network that the people who are cyber criminal specialists, how they look at the network, all these different devices are access points to those financial accounts that they want to target to get the money. We become vulnerable to the cybercrime to just target that access point, that entry point.
Particularly, I will say, if you're transacting doing business online in an area, a coffee shop or in a mall
Yes,
where
exactly.
the Wi-Fi may not be secure.
Yes, yes. So all the different devices, all the different networks, all the
Indeed.
different places we use it. So just to think about, well, if I'm going, my bank accounts, my financial accounts, I'm going to protect them. I'm doing all the right things with the passwords. Think about how you and where you access them, because that's important too.
Because we are using electronic devices, and electronic devices are exposed to malware, and of course, malware then exposes consumers to identity theft. So my advice to consumers would be just to make sure, because there's so many parties involved in mobile payments, make sure you ask, how am I protected? And, if there's a problem, where do I go? And what will you do for me?
I look at my smartphone, and I wonder how many Canadians have protected it adequately. Especially, let's talk now a little bit about probably the most vulnerable segment of our population, and that's of seniors. And they might look at, someone like myself might get my mom a new smartphone and having a lot of fun getting on Facebook and doing all these things, but not realizing that this is a computer in her pocket. So if she's online on a computer or just an innocent enough phone in the comfort of her home, how do we really get this segment of our population to grasp what phishing is, what an online romance scam is, that that somebody could actually do this in another country, could be there and pretend and send these false pictures when because they didn't grow up with computers, and some of them, not all of them, might not be as savvy. Maybe I'll start with you, Daniel.
When you speak to a senior who, they've been widowed, the kids have moved out, they're alone in the country, somebody convinces them to get online, and they start the Facebook, they start this, reaching out, life is, full now for them. And then the scammers, from miles away, thousands of miles away, can zoom in on them, and once they've made the connection, they lose everything. And it pains me when you look at the costs of this and that. Here's this person, and one of the main things they're telling me is, I'll never go online again. So the bad guys have stolen that from that person, without and it's and you see so much damage that the criminals do for a few lousy bucks.
Cairine, do you have any thoughts on what more we can do specifically to help protect our seniors?
We have a financial education program for seniors. It's part of our overall Community Connect volunteer program. We have 12,000 CPAs now across the country who are trained to deliver free financial education sessions on a variety of topics. And we have two specifically on fraud, and one is specifically for seniors. And the seniors presentation on fraud really delves into the various types that you talked about, the grandparent scheme. There's the captain calling, you've won a cruise prize one. There's an endless number of things.
So many great resources, and I want our viewers to know that all of this is going to be available on the website that's listed at the end of this video. We'll be updating that as well with new information, new statistics. I want to thank you all so much for being here.